Everybody needs to sell, whether you are convincing somebody to buy your product or whether you just need to sell an idea. I signed up for a sales demo from a software company, and I'm going to walk you through this real-life conversation. We'll look at 5 techniques to optimize the selling process to help make your sales pitch more persuasive. I replaced the software name with Acme and the 2 salespeople with John and Jane. The first sales technique: break the greeting ritual. The conversation starts with pleasantries. How are you doing? Good. How are you? Good. And this is a missed opportunity. First impressions are critical. Even if a first impression changes over time, you're always going to have remnants of the original impression because that was the starting point. At the beginning of your sales call, when prospects ask how you're doing, they're expecting you to say something like good or fine. So instead, respond with something unique or different. This does a few things. First, it's called the peak technique. If you ask somebody on the street for money, you should ask for a weird amount. Your question will be so unexpected that it prevents the instinctive behavior of just mindlessly refusing it. Likewise, at the beginning of your sales call, even something as simple as just responding in an unexpected way, that's enough to snap them out of any type of mindless disposition they might be having and listen to your sales pitch. The second benefit: you look more competent. It's called the red sneakers effect. Whenever you break a social norm, people perceive you with higher status and competence. The third benefit: all of these qualities should transfer to the product. Much like a logo symbolizes a brand, salespeople are symbolic representations of a product. All of their traits will seem representative of the product or service. Subconsciously, the prospect is going to be grouping this salesperson with the product. If the salesperson seems very happy or energetic, it creates this deep belief that these positive qualities are originating from the product. So, if the prospect buys this product, they will enter this group. And if they enter this group, they become endowed with this same happiness. It sounds weird, but I explain the detailed reasons in Chapter 4 of The Tangled Mind. So that's the first recommendation. Break the standard greeting ritual. Disrupt their expectations by responding with something unexpected yet upbeat. The second technique: schmooze over a similarity. In this sales call, John jumps straight into the selling, but research shows that you should have a personal conversation before you start talking about business. And ideally, you should bond over a similarity. Here's an example from another sales call. It's hard to tell, but the salesperson might have looked at my LinkedIn profile beforehand and noticed that I moved from Boston to Raleigh, because on the call, he told me that he lives in the Northeast, but he's thinking about moving to Raleigh. And his choice of the Northeast was smart. He actually lives in New York, but I lived in Boston. If he had said New York, we would have been in different groups. But he didn't say New York. He broadened his location to the Northeast, which merged us into the same in-group. Similarities are persuasive because subconsciously your brain confuses your identity with this person. In a way, it feels like you are this person, and naturally, you're more persuaded by them because you want to help them. It feels like you're helping yourself. So that's the second technique. Before the sales call, look at the LinkedIn profile of the prospect to look for any type of similarity, and then bond over this similarity at the beginning of the call. The third technique: start with their goals. John starts explaining how the business has 2 components, software and research services. And this is a mistake. John starts selling the product without knowing anything about me or my goals. In reality, I'm only interested in the software component, but John is going to start selling me on the research services component. And here's why that's detrimental. Our brain experiences a dilution effect. Suppose that somebody is selling an exercise program that helps you build muscle and lose weight. These are 2 reasons, right? So that seems good. But it's not. When you think of this exercise program, you activate this node in your brain. If you have 2 goals associated with this node, activation is traveling to these other nodes, but this activation is becoming diluted. Let's say that you only care about losing weight. If we didn't have this irrelevant reason of building muscle, this node for losing weight would have become fully activated, and this stronger activation would have been more persuasive. The same thing is happening on this sales call. By focusing on this research services component, John is siphoning activation away from the component that's truly important to me. Specialists are usually better than generalists, so don't needlessly portray yourself as a generalist when you could have inherited the benefits of being perceived as a specialist. Also, when you ask them to describe their goals, don't ask, "So what are your goals?" Instead, ask, "So what made you interested in us?" Both questions extract the same information, but the second question and the wording of it is going to be more persuasive. When prospects answer this question, everything that they say is going to reinforce a belief that they are interested in your product, and later they'll feel more compelled to behave consistently with this belief and identity. Here's the key takeaway. Before you start selling, ask the prospect why they're interested in your product. Use their response to focus on the most relevant and important aspects of your product so that you don't dilute this information with irrelevant stuff. The fourth technique, customize your examples. Later in the conversation, Jane starts demonstrating the software by writing test in empty fields, and she even says, this makes absolutely no sense. Now, in her defense, my brain should be able to look at these test variables and think of my own applications, but unfortunately, our brain doesn't work that way. In deciding whether or not to buy this software, my brain is going to imagine myself using it. This simulation is going to give me a way to predict and gauge the value that I would receive by using this software. Yet, when I see things like test, it becomes harder for myself to imagine using this software because this isn't something that I would be doing with this software. So because I can't imagine myself using this software, I can't gauge the value that I would receive from this software. Instead, you need to customize your examples to the prospect. Let's say that one of my clients sells vitamins. Instead of writing test variables, Jane could set up a hypothetical project for this client. Because this example is grounded in reality, I can easily imagine implementing this project, and thus I can easily gauge the value of this software. Here's the takeaway. Instead of using examples that make absolutely no sense, use examples that make sense. Immerse your prospects into a realistic narrative so that they can imagine using your product and thus imagine the value that they would receive from it. And finally, avoid unnecessary disclaimers. Throughout the conversation, Jane uses a lot of disclaimers. It won't be the cutest demo in the world. This is my very messy demo environment that's not organized at all. In one study, researchers called these dispreferred markers, and they actually boosted persuasion. But in our context, these are going to reduce persuasion for two main reasons. First, you need a positive statement. Suppose that Jane said, "It's not the easiest software to learn, but you become addicted once you get the hang of it." Mentioning this negative aspect heightens her credibility because she just admitted to something negative. When she then delivers this positive statement right afterward, this benefit seems stronger because of her heightened credibility, but you need this positive statement in order to benefit from the disclaimer. In the sales call, Jane was only including these negative statements. This is my very messy demo environment. And here's the second reason why it weakens persuasion. Your words mold the reality that people see. If I say, "Look at this rabbit," your brain will see the ears and the mouth. But if I say, "Look at this duck," your brain will see the beak and the back of the head. Your words dictate how people perceive the world. On this sales call, her screen really didn't look messy or disorganized, but simply because she framed it that way, my brain was forced to interpret her environment in that way. I also noticed that Jane felt obligated to fill silences. She would make noises whenever her computer was doing something. Whenever you feel nervous, like in a sales call, your perception of time is slower because you're experiencing a heightened state of arousal. Silences really aren't as long as they feel. 1 second is going to feel much longer than it actually is. So don't feel pressured to fill them. If anything, silence can be good because it allows the prospect to ask questions. The takeaway, avoid unnecessary disclaimers. Don't say things like, "This is the worst demo ever," because your words are going to be painting this reality. So those are 5 techniques that can help you with selling. Now, I realize that it's easy for me to sit here with the written transcript and look for ways to improve it. Obviously, it's much tougher in a real-time conversation, but the more that you study these responses and techniques, the more natural they'll hopefully become. And if you want more of my commentary on sales, I'll put a link to my sales course below, or you could pick up my books. And I'll see you next time.